Welcome to the EQ Fit podcast. Our mission is to equip people to prosper in every aspect of their life. Whether you're at home or in the workplace, we explore practical ways of improving success, satisfaction, finding balance, and building enjoyable and beneficial relationships. Thank you for joining us. So let's continue our focus on leading with emotional intelligence. And we're going to talk about the third major category or competency of emotional intelligence, which is motivation. Now, this one is very interesting because there's so much misunderstanding about what motivation is. I mean, at a basic level, we understand if there's something that motivates me, that's a good thing, right? But let's really dive into where does motivation come from? And as far as leading with emotional intelligence, one of the most critical competencies for leaders is to be able to motivate themselves and motivate other people. Leadership is about getting things done through other people. As I tell a lot of my clients, it's not about you doing something somebody else could do just because you're better at it and faster and it makes you feel good. That's not really leadership. Leadership is getting things done through other people and helping them to develop and empowering them along the way. So this motivation focus really helps us to understand what is the fuel that drives energy to get things done. Now, let me start with a story. I always like to start with a story. Motivation is very misunderstood, and it's a very important part of our lives. Where does it come from? How does it work? How do we increase our motivation? So, as I'm writing this script for this episode, I'm about to enter into one of the most stressful things you can attempt, and that's moving to a new home. And of course, I'm doing it in the middle of summer. And so let's please not have any comments about what a genius I am for doing that. It's hot where I am. But as I've mentioned, and I've mentioned it to many people many times, moving is probably the least favorite thing in my life. I've moved many times, and it is not a motivator for me, for sure. And here's a few reasons why. You come to the realization of how much you've accumulated over the years that you've been in the home you're in. There's a massive effort to go through things, get the house packed, and then you know how much work is coming just to get yourself moved into that new place. All in all, a very demotivating thought process. But this time is different. I'm actually motivated to make this move. And this is something new for me, I will admit that. I hate moving, but not this time. Why? I have been reflecting on that. There are some external motivators that are coming into play. So a significant reduction in monthly expenses, getting to a part of town that has better options for restaurants and for other things, just a lot more convenient. Being closer to our church, to our friends, to our family. All of those are external motivators, and I'm excited about those. But those alone are not enough to explain why I have a much higher level of motivation for this move. Motivation that lasts, motivation that you can count on, comes from inside, or what we call internal or intrinsic motivation. It's based on our values, our beliefs, our standards that we set for ourselves. The technical term, as I said, is intrinsic motivation. So why am I feeling intrinsically motivated to make this move? Because it positively impacts many of the things that I hold dear. Better financial security, enhanced time with family and friends, closer proximity to the place where we practice our faith, and closer to our clients. Motivation doesn't have to be a mystery. The secret to enhancing intrinsic motivation is to reframe things in our mind in a way that generates emotions that increase motivation. So let me kind of try to condense that down. If we can reframe the way we think about certain things so that it generates more positive, motivational generating feelings, then we're in a better place. We will have more intrinsic motivation. Emotional drivers are at the heart of motivation. They are directly connected to the amount of motivation we have. Emotions will either add to our motivation or they will detract from it. There really isn't any middle ground. Now, the more that our emotional environment enhances our motivation, the more energy we'll have to accomplish what we're facing, whether that be a challenge or an opportunity or even moving to a new home. It's really that simple. So, how does this enhance leadership? If we start to take that thought process of generating more intrinsic motivation by reframing our thoughts, by generating more positive emotions that do actually enhance our motivation. Well, by increasing motivation, leaders can significantly enhance the impact they have on themselves, on their team, and on their organization. Motivated leaders are more likely to inspire and engage others. Leaders who get their motivation from inside themselves can inspire their teams by demonstrating passion and commitment. And I cannot overstate how important that is. If your team sees you with passion and commitment, that is contagious. Emotions are contagious. And if you'll think about it, you've been in situations where somebody's feeling sad and you start to feel sad, or somebody's laughing and they're happy and things are great and you start to be happy and laugh with them. Emotions are contagious. And so inspiring and engaging others, this is truly inspiring others, and it fosters a more engaged and productive workforce. Another thing that motivated leaders are likely to do is they're likely to drive innovation and performance. Motivated leaders are more likely to take initiative, embrace challenges, and pursue innovative solutions. Their drive can lead to higher performance and better team and organizational outcomes. Motivated leaders can foster a positive organizational culture. And this is really important. Think of it this way. Individuals choose the emotional environment that they live in. We really do choose the emotional environment that we're living in. Well, the organizational or team culture is the same kind of thing. If the leader can develop a culture that others can engage with, and it's an environment of safety and security and innovation and productivity and optimism and intrinsic motivation, then that is going to expand throughout the team and eventually throughout the organization. So culture here is really important. And motivated leaders can navigate challenges more effectively. With strong internal motivation, leaders are better equipped to navigate challenges and setbacks. And I see so many leaders and teams who get stuck because they cannot navigate a setback or a mistake or something that happens that derails them. If you get derailed, where is the energy to get things back on the right rail, headed the right direction? That's where intrinsic motivation is so critical. So motivation, within the context of emotional intelligence, refers to the intrinsic drive to achieve and to improve. It encompasses the desire to pursue goals with energy and with persistence, driven by internal rewards rather than external factors. Again, very important point here. External motivators are unreliable. Money, fame, recognition, likes on Facebook, whatever it happens to be. Those things are unreliable. What you can rely on is internal rewards that you have set up for yourself that drive your internal motivation. Now, as you know, I use the 6 seconds model of emotional intelligence to do the work that I do, and have learned so much from that model and all of the 30 years of work that has gone into that largest emotional intelligence organization in the world. In that model, motivation by itself is really made up of intrinsic motivation, a skill or competency that is a part of the 8 skills or competencies in the 6 seconds model. But there are some other things, some other skills of emotional intelligence that we will talk about that add to that. Motivation is kind of partly in the self-management area in that model, but also in the self-direction area. And we'll talk about specific skills here in a minute. I'm going to run through those 8 skills very quickly. I know I've done this in the past, but if you haven't listened to a previous episode, then let me run through those. Emotional literacy, recognizing and understanding your emotions and how they impact you. Number 2, recognizing patterns, identifying and understanding recurrent behaviors and reactions. They are also called habits. They're also called neural pathways. Number 3, consequential thinking, evaluating the consequences of actions before you make your decisions and move forward. Number 4, navigating emotions, managing and influencing your own emotions effectively, literally repurposing the energy and information from those emotions for a more strategic and intentional outcome. Number 5, intrinsic motivation. There you go. Pursuing your goals driven by internal rewards. Number 6, optimism. Maintaining a positive outlook despite the challenges. Number 7, empathy. Understanding and sharing the feelings of others. Number 8, noble goals, or pursuing noble goals, connecting daily choices to your overarching purpose in your life, or the standards that you've set to live by. Now, out of all of those, for this area of motivation, the ones that stick out as being highly impactful to enhance motivation, of course, number 1 is intrinsic motivation. How do you grow your internal motivation? Number 2 is optimism. And number 3 is pursue noble goals. Those 3 put together work extremely well together, because what you're doing is you're choosing the environment that you live in. That's optimism, looking to the future with hope and possibility. You're choosing to pull your motivation, your energy that you need from internal motivation, intrinsic motivation that comes out of your values and beliefs and your standards, the things that will drive more motivation and energy for you. And you're using your goals, what we call noble goals, overarching purposes in your life, to be your compass and your guide, which will then also be the measure of reward that you will give yourself when you achieve those things or when you maintain those goals and maintain those standards. Those three working together are powerful generators of motivation. So, as we think about that, intrinsic motivation itself, let's just start with that one. It's the internal drive to pursue goals. You persist in the face of challenges, and you foster a growth mindset. So, breaking it down into some very practical things that these skills can bring you. Optimism is the second of the three. It's the ability to maintain a positive outlook, expect favorable outcomes despite difficulties. What does that do? It encourages resilience, which is so important, and it creates a positive work environment. And then the third one, this pursuing noble goals, which is kind of a compass, it helps you to stay aligned with your deeply held beliefs and values. And it goes beyond just personal gain. It really aligns with your vision of what you want your life to be and the legacy that you want to leave behind you. What does that do? It inspires and engages other people, and it drives meaningful impact. Now, when you put all of that together, that is massive for leaders. If that's how you generate motivation for yourself as a leader and for your team and for your organization, by breaking something kind of hard to understand like motivation down into these specific skills, we can now understand how it works and how these skills work together. Now, I want to share some supporting information here so you don't think I'm just kind of making this stuff up. As I've mentioned in the past, 6 Seconds puts out a state of the heart study, and their 2024 report highlights that leaders who exhibit high levels of emotional intelligence, and we just spent some time going over 3 skills of emotional intelligence that are so important to leaders. For those leaders that exhibit high levels of those, particularly in motivation-related areas like we've talked about, they are more likely to have engaged and high-performing teams. And as a leader, isn't that what we want? Engaged and high-performing teams? Well, here's the specific numbers. Teams led by emotionally intelligent leaders are 25% more productive. What could you do with 25% more productivity? What kind of a difference would that make for you? Here's another number that's impressive. Employee engagement increases by 32% when leaders demonstrate strong intrinsic motivation and optimism. When you think of the global numbers that we see in Gallup and other places of engagement being somewhere in the low 30% range, if you could get engagement levels up to 60+%, we know that engaged employees give us 2 to 4 times the productivity of non-engaged employees. That's a lot of productivity. And that's exactly what we want as leaders. And it's not just about performance and productivity. It's about setting the right environment. So people want to do well. You start to get this momentum going where intrinsic motivation starts to get ignited in every team member, and everybody gets excited about the shared mission, the shared vision, the shared values, the shared goals. And when that happens, things change. And they change for the better. And they can change in a hurry. So when we look at creating the optimum team environment, here's some interesting information from Gallup. Gallup's State of the Global Workplace 2024 report states clearly that organizations with highly motivated leaders see a 21% increase in profitability. I know you might have thought that was going to be productivity again, but it's not. Think about that. A 21% increase in profitability. That's huge, especially if you have stakeholders who are looking over your shoulder wondering, how's the organization doing? Employee engagement is significantly higher by 17% in teams led by leaders who are intrinsically motivated and have a clear set of noble goals. The stuff that we're talking about here has real value. I know I have heard it for over 15 years from owners and leaders and organizations of all kinds. Oh, that's all soft stuff. We don't need that. It's not a big deal. It's interesting because every 3 or 4 years, things shift and change a little bit. It used to be, I don't want to talk about emotions. I don't want to hear about it. They have no place in the workplace. Every few years, things shift. Now we're at a point where people know emotional intelligence is critical, and there's starting to be a great curiosity about what can emotional intelligence do for us. But there is still a huge amount of learning and development that needs to happen, and there's a lot of stuff out there that isn't all that good. Hopefully, this is not among that. I spend a lot of time, and I put my reputation on the line when I say these things. What I'm bringing to you is the best information, the best facts, the best details, the best methodology, practices, procedures, science that I can possibly put together for you, because I'm talking about your life and the lives of people that you impact. And to me, that is absolutely the highest calling there is to help people to be the best they can be. Okay, as always, I want to get to the practical side of how do we develop these skills? What do we do with this? Because this is not what a friend of mine calls edutainment. This is not about providing some information that's entertaining. This is about real life practical applications. So when we think about developing motivation and the skills behind motivation, how do we do that? Well, let's start with intrinsic motivation. We set personal goals. We encourage ourselves to set personal and professional goals that align with our values and our passions. And when that alignment happens, we foster a deeper sense of purpose and drive. Have you ever taken on something that you weren't very passionate about? My guess is you didn't put out your best effort. And that's very natural. That's human. And so to get that motivation, there needs to be commitment and there needs to be passion involved with that. So setting those goals is important in enhancing intrinsic motivation. And then self-reflection, and this is an important part of growing intrinsic motivation. regular self-reflection where we can stop and think about and understand what truly motivates me. What is it inside of me? And this is the key. If you're counting on external motivators, they're just unreliable. They're just not going to do it. So what really motivates me? And again, I'm going to say journaling, thinking about it, meditating on it, all of those can be very effective tools. And I know there's a lot of people, especially leaders and owners, and I hear it all the time. I'm not going to journal. That's for somebody else. I don't need that stuff. I guarantee you, if you do that, if you get over whatever it is that makes you want to avoid that stuff, if you'll get past that and just do it for yourself, I guarantee you are going to help yourself, because you're going to start to see patterns. You're going to start to see triggers. You're going to see things that you may not have seen if you don't capture them in a way you can review them. And no, it's not good enough to just keep them in your brain, because your brain will stack those away in the same place you put all that other stuff you don't want to think about. No judgment on my part, though. The next skill, again, is optimism. How can we develop that? Well, positive reframing. We teach ourselves to reframe challenges and setbacks as opportunities for growth. And I know you've heard that before, but have you ever really done it, or done it multiple times? It really does work. The way we think about something generates a certain set of emotions. And those, again, emotional drivers will either add to or take away from your motivation. So positive reframing is important. And then practice gratitude. Cultivate a habit of gratitude, which enhances your optimism. And I think sometimes we kind of fly by that and don't think about it. It really is important. We have a lot to be thankful for. And you can live in a victim mentality. That's your choice. When I say that we choose the emotional environment we live in, that's part of it. Do you want to be a pessimist all the time? Do you want to be a victim all the time? Or do you want to be somebody who's challenged and who coaches others, who creates things? Do you want to be an innovator? Do you want to be more optimistic? Those are things that can be very helpful. And one of the ways to get there is to think about the good things in your life and be thankful for those. And then that third skill of emotional intelligence to help us grow motivation in ourselves and others is pursue noble goals. So define a noble goal. Understand and articulate a noble goal that transcends immediate tasks and connects to a broader long-term vision. This goal should inspire and guide our actions. So it's not just, I want to make my numbers this month, or gosh, I hope things work out okay. It's not any of that. It's what is an ongoing goal and standard I want to hold my decisions up to, my actions up to. I want to be accountable to that. And then the other thing you can do to help develop this skill of pursuing noble goals is integrate those things into your daily life. It doesn't do any good to set those goals and then not practice them or work toward them. Be encouraged to integrate those into your daily life in a way that actually plays out in your routines, in your decision-making processes. 43% of daily actions are driven by our habits, basically without conscious thought. Autopilot. Is that really how you want to make your decisions? No, be more intentional. And that's what this is about, by integrating these things, these noble goals, into our daily actions and decisions. This kind of integration It ensures that our actions are consistently aligned with our long-term vision. So, let's talk about practical ways to grow this overall area of motivation. Vision boarding. And do it digitally, do it by hand, it doesn't matter. Create a visual representation of personal and professional goals. Vision boards are great as a visual reminder of what we're working towards, and they're really good for teams. One of the team building processes that I have is to do a vision board with a team. And there's going to be a lot of disagreement, and there's going to be a lot of different opinions, and that is wonderful, because coming out of that will be consensus and shared vision, shared values, shared goals. That's what we need to get to. Here's something else you can do to develop this area of motivation: mentorship and coaching. Engage in that for yourself. Find a good coach. Somebody like me, no pride there at all, right? Or find a mentor, somebody you trust that you admire, and use that for yourself, but be that for your people. Be that for your team members. As those relationships develop, feedback becomes easier. Constructive feedback becomes much easier in that kind of relationship. And it can provide support and encouragement for everyone. And that is going to boost motivation. Here's the next one: professional development. What a surprise that I would bring that up, right? Invest in yourself. Leaders are learners. Invest in your learning, invest in your growth, invest in your development. There are some very good resources out there, and we have many of them, that we provide on growing emotional intelligence that directly impacts the things we're talking about, which is motivation today. Take advantage of those things, whether it's asynchronous learning with online courses or coaching or reading a book that really is going to bring some good information to you. But I truly believe in a 3-part process to growth and development. Engage with the learning in whatever format or channel or mode it takes. Then activate the learning by practicing it and trying things out. And then reflect on what you've learned, what worked, what didn't work, why did it work, why didn't it work. What's the next thing that we can do to help grow this area of motivation and enhance it? Celebrate the small wins. And I'll admit, I'm really bad at this. I celebrate the big wins. I love the big wins. And it's kind of like there's a huge drought between big wins. But you know what? I had a good friend tell me one time, Steve, look at all the things that you should be celebrating along the way. And it really finally, the light bulb came on, and I said, you're right. And you know what I found? By celebrating the small wins, I had more motivation. I had more energy. It refilled that well of intrinsic motivation inside of me. And the last one I'll talk about is mindfulness and stress management. Again, mindfulness is just being mindful of how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what triggers you have, how you can improve on things. Stress management, I mean, if you feel yourself reaching that point of being very stressed and all of that, find ways to reduce the pressure, reduce the stress. Mindfulness is a good way to do that. Meditation, taking a walk, whatever it is that helps you move through that. I have a good friend that, he gets on the treadmill. And he just gets on the treadmill, he'll listen to a podcast, or he'll do something like that, and And it gives him that chance to kind of decompress while he's doing something good for himself and his body. And that physical part of things, that physical exercise, along with some mental stimulation, that's a great way to reduce stress. So let's tie this up. Let's close this out today with this. Developing and strengthening emotional intelligence, specifically this area of motivation, is absolutely essential for optimal leadership impact. If you want to be a leader worth following, if you want to be a leader that has a lot of influence with people, you're going to need to be able to motivate yourself well and motivate others. And it isn't going to be through raises and money, and it's not about that. It's about those internal things that touch our hearts and touch our souls, that truly motivate people. That's motivation that you can count on. And taking this practical approach to developing these skills, growing your emotional intelligence, and these specific skills and competencies that will help generate motivation for yourself and others, that's the pathway to great leadership. Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you have any questions about this week's episode, or maybe a suggestion for future episodes you'd like us to explore, please contact us through our website at eqfit.org. For more information and inspiration, connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube at EQFit.